Have you ever had a friend who's definitely trying to make a move on you, but they're doing it in the most adorably awkward way possible? Well, that's exactly what happened to me last summer, and I'm still not sure if I should be laughing about it or swooning. I guess I'm doing a bit of both. My name is Alex, and I've always been the practical one in my friend group. The guy who doesn't believe in ghosts, who always has a logical explanation for everything, and who generally keeps his feet firmly planted on the ground. My friends call me a skeptic, but I prefer the term realist. I'm 23, just finished college with a degree in engineering, and I've moved back to my hometown temporarily while figuring out my next steps. Then there's Jamie. Where do I even begin with Jamie? He's like a walking contradiction, studious and top of his class in literature, but also the most superstitious person I've ever met. He believes in horoscopes, carries a lucky charm everywhere, and swears his childhood home had a friendly ghost named Margaret who used to move his toys around. He's got this infectious laugh and these expressive brown eyes that somehow make even his wildest stories seem plausible when he's telling them. We've been friends since high school, but over the years, our friendship has evolved into something that hovers in that undefined territory. You know, where you're not quite sure if you're just really close friends or if there's something more brewing beneath the surface. I should mention that our small town of Pinewood isn't exactly a hub of excitement. It's one of those places where everyone knows everyone, where the most thrilling event is the annual fall festival, and where rumors spread faster than wildfire. Being one of the few openly gay guys in town, both Jamie and I had naturally gravitated toward each other in high school, initially just as friends who understood each other's experiences. But lately, I'd been noticing Jamie finding more and more creative excuses to spend time together, each one more elaborate than the last. So when my phone lit up with Jamie's name one Friday night in July, I wasn't entirely surprised. What did surprise me was the content of his message. Alex, I think my bed is haunted. No joke. Things keep moving at night, and there are these weird noises. Would you maybe want to come over for a sleepover? Just to, verify I'm not losing my mind. Plus, safety in numbers against ghosts, right? Grinning face with sweat. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. A haunted bed? Really? That was his play? I sat there for a moment, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard as I contemplated my response. Part of me wanted to call him out on this transparent attempt to get me to sleep in his bed. Another part, a bigger part than I cared to admit, was charmed by the sheer adorableness of his approach. After a moment's hesitation, I typed back, "A haunted bed, huh? That's a new one. But sure, I'll be your ghostbuster for the night. Should I bring anything? Holy water? Sage? A Ouija board?" His response was immediate. "Don't even joke about Ouija boards, Alex. But yes to snacks, and maybe an extra blanket." Ghost activity supposedly drops the temperature in rooms. I could practically see him biting his lip nervously as he typed that, and it made me smile. That evening, I packed an overnight bag with probably more care than the situation warranted. I threw in my toothbrush, a change of clothes, and yes, an extra blanket. Not because I believed in temperature-dropping ghosts, but because Jamie's concern was endearing. I also grabbed a bag of chips and some microwave popcorn, because what's a sleepover without snacks? As an afterthought, I tossed in a small flashlight. Not for ghost hunting, of course, but because it seemed like the kind of detail that would make Jamie happy. The drive to Jamie's house took only about 15 minutes. He lived in one of those older Victorian-style homes on the edge of town, the kind that naturally lent itself to ghost stories with its creaky floorboards and vintage charm. His parents had moved to Florida the previous year, leaving Jamie to house-sit while he finished his master's degree. The arrangement gave him a rent-free place to live, but also meant he was often alone in that big old house, which probably explained his sudden concern about supernatural roommates. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Jamie was already waiting on the porch, illuminated by the warm glow of the porch light. He was wearing plaid pajama bottoms and a faded university t-shirt, his dark hair slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his hands through it anxiously. When he saw my car, his face broke into that wide, genuine smile that always made my stomach do a little flip. "My hero arrives," he called out as I stepped from the car, overnight bag slung over my shoulder. "I was starting to think you might stand me up. And missed the chance to meet a real ghost?" "Never," I replied, climbing the porch steps. "Though I have to say, if this is an elaborate prank to scare me, I will never forgive you." Jamie placed a hand over his heart, his expression solemn, but his eyes twinkling. I swear on my collection of first edition classics, this is not a prank. Weird stuff has been happening, Alex. Like, legitimately weird. I raised an eyebrow, unconvinced but amused. All right, show me to this haunted bed of yours, then. Let's see what we're dealing with. Jamie led me into the house, and I was immediately enveloped in the familiar scent of old books and the lavender candles he was always burning. Despite its age, the house was cozy and well kept, with walls lined with bookshelves and comfortable, if slightly mismatched, furniture. As we climbed the creaking staircase to the second floor, Jamie began his ghost story in earnest. It started about a week ago, he explained, his voice dropping to a near whisper as if the ghost might be listening. I was almost asleep when I felt something, like a weight at the foot of the bed. I thought it was just my imagination, but then it happened again the next night. And then I started hearing these whispers. Whispers? I repeated, trying to keep the skepticism out of my voice. What kind of whispers? I can't make out words exactly, Jamie said, leading me down the hallway. It's more like murmuring. And sometimes my blankets get tugged, like someone's adjusting them. We reached his bedroom door, which he pushed open with dramatic slowness. Inside was exactly what I expected from Jamie's room. Bookshelves overflowing with novels, a desk cluttered with papers and sticky notes, and a comfortable-looking queen-sized bed with a navy blue comforter. Nothing particularly spooky, unless you counted the slightly eerie shadows cast by the bedside lamp. This is where the haunting happens, huh? I said, dropping my bag on a chair. Looks pretty normal to me. Jamie folded his arms across his chest. Just wait. The activity usually starts around midnight. I checked my watch. It was only 9:30. So we have some time to kill before the ghost makes its grand appearance. What's the plan? Movie? Games? Or should we hold a seance? I wiggled my eyebrows teasingly. Very funny, Jamie said, but he was smiling. I was thinking we could watch something. Nothing scary, though. I don't need any more fuel for my imagination tonight. We settled on a comedy we'd both seen before and set up Jamie's laptop at the foot of the bed. As we arranged pillows against the headboard and spread out our snacks, I couldn't help but notice how carefully Jamie was maintaining a respectful distance between us on the bed. For someone supposedly trying to lure me into a sleepover situation, he was being surprisingly gentlemanly. About halfway through the movie, the house made a loud creaking sound, and Jamie practically jumped out of his skin, instinctively grabbing my arm. That was just the house settling, I said gently, but I didn't move to remove his hand from my arm. Old houses make noises, Jamie. It doesn't mean they're haunted. I know that, he said, looking slightly embarrassed as he withdrew his hand. Logically, I know that. But when you're alone here night after night, your mind starts playing tricks on you. There was something vulnerable in his admission that made my heart soften. Hey, that's why I'm here, right? Ghost or no ghost, it's nice to have company sometimes. Jamie's smile was grateful, and for a moment, I wondered if the whole haunted bed story was less about trying to make a move and more about simply not wanting to be alone in this big old house. But then the moment passed, and we turned our attention back to the movie. As the night progressed, the atmosphere in the room began to change. Maybe it was the late hour or the intimacy of sharing a bed, even just to watch a movie, but our conversation drifted from casual banter to deeper topics. Jamie told me about his thesis on supernatural elements in Victorian literature, and I shared my anxieties about finding a job that would let me stay close to home, close to the people I cared about. Do you really want to stay in Pinewood? Jamie asked, his voice soft in the dim light of the room. The movie had ended, but neither of us had made a move to start another one. I always thought you'd be the first to leave, off to some big city engineering firm. I shrugged, suddenly feeling exposed. I used to think that too. But lately, I've been thinking there's a lot to be said for having roots, you know? For having people who know you, who've known you through everything. Jamie was looking at me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. I know exactly what you mean, he said quietly. The clock on his nightstand read 11:45. Almost ghost time, according to Jamie's timeline. We should probably get ready for bed, Jamie suggested, closing the laptop. You know, so we're settled in when the activity starts. I nodded, grabbing my toothbrush from my bag. Lead the way to the bathroom. There was something oddly domestic about standing side by side at the bathroom sink, brushing our teeth in comfortable silence. I caught Jamie's eye in the mirror, and he gave me a foamy smile that made me laugh. It felt nice. Natural. Back in the bedroom, Jamie hesitated beside the bed. So, you can take that side, he said, pointing to the left side of the bed. Unless you'd prefer the right? Or I could make up the guest room if you'd rather. This is fine, I interrupted, saving him from his nervous rambling. Left side works for me. Besides, I thought the whole point was to verify your ghost story. Can't do that from the guest room. Relief washed over his face. Right? Yes. Ghost verification. That's exactly the point. We climbed into bed, and Jamie turned off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness save for the faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. We lay there on our backs, a respectful distance between us, staring up at the ceiling. The silence stretched between us, comfortable but charged with something unspoken. So, I finally said, what exactly should I be looking out for? Cold spots? Floating orbs? Slimer from Ghostbusters? Jamie laughed softly. Just anything unusual. The weight on the bed. The whispers. Sometimes it feels like someone's watching me. Maybe it's just your guilty conscience, I teased. All those library books you've forgotten to return, coming back to haunt you. Very funny, Jamie murmured, but I could hear the smile in his voice. But seriously, it's freaky, Alex. I'm not making this up. I believe that you believe it, I said diplomatically. We fell silent again, and I found myself actually listening intently to the sounds of the old house. There were creaks and groans, the occasional sound of the wind against the windows, but nothing that screamed supernatural presence to me. After about 20 minutes, I was starting to get drowsy when Jamie suddenly gasped. Did you feel that? He whispered urgently. I hadn't felt anything. What? The bed. It dipped, like someone sat down at the foot. I propped myself up on my elbows, peering toward the end of the bed. In the dim light, I could see nothing out of the ordinary. Jamie, I think you might be. But then I felt it too, a subtle shift in the mattress, as if a weight had been added. A chill ran down my spine despite my skepticism. I sat up fully now, squinting into the darkness. See, Jamie hissed, sitting up beside me. I told you. Before I could respond, there was a soft thump from somewhere in the room, and Jamie let out a small yelp, instinctively moving closer to me until our shoulders were touching. That was probably just something falling, I said, but my voice wasn't as steady as I would have liked. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and turned on the flashlight, sweeping it around the room. The beam of light revealed nothing unusual, just Jamie's familiar bedroom, shadows dancing as I moved the light. But then we both heard it, a soft, barely audible murmuring sound, like someone talking under their breath. Jamie's hand found mine in the darkness and gripped it tightly. Do you hear that? He whispered. I nodded, my heart racing. The rational part of my brain was searching for explanations, pipes in the walls, a radio left on somewhere in the house, the neighbors' voices carrying through the old windows. But another part of me, a part one usually kept firmly in check, was starting to wonder. The murmuring stopped as suddenly as it had started, and the room fell silent again except for our slightly accelerated breathing. Jamie's hand was still in mine, warm and slightly trembling. I'm not crazy, he said softly. That's what's been happening. I gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. I don't think you're crazy. Old houses have all kinds of weird acoustics. It could be. The bed dipped again, more noticeably this time, and simultaneously, the temperature in the room seemed to drop by several degrees. Jamie made a small, frightened sound and moved even closer to me. Okay, I admitted, that was weird. But there's still probably a logical explanation. Like what? Jamie challenged. I don't know. Uneven floorboards making the bed shift? A draft coming through somewhere causing the temperature change? Jamie shook his head. You felt it too, Alex. Something is here with us. I wasn't ready to concede to ghosts, but I couldn't deny that something strange was happening. And if I was being completely honest with myself, I was getting a little freaked out too. What do we do? Jamie asked, his voice small. I thought for a moment. Well, if there is a ghost, it doesn't seem hostile. It hasn't tried to harm us or anything. Maybe we should just talk to it. Jamie looked at me like I'd suggested we jump out the window. Talk to it. Are you serious? Why not? Isn't that what they do in those ghost hunting shows you love? Try to communicate. Jamie bit his lip, considering. I guess so. But what do we say? I cleared my throat, feeling slightly ridiculous. Hello? Is someone there? We mean no harm. We're just trying to understand what's happening. We waited, the silence stretching out uncomfortably. Nothing happened. Maybe it's shy, Jamie suggested. I couldn't help but laugh at that. A shy ghost. That's a new one. Jamie nudged me with his elbow. Hey, ghosts were people too, you know. They probably have all kinds of personalities. Just as he finished speaking, the murmuring sound returned, louder this time, almost like it was responding to our conversation. Jamie's grip on my hand tightened painfully. Did you hear that? He whispered. It's like it's trying to talk to us. I nodded, my skepticism wavering in the face of what was happening. But I still can't make out any words. The murmuring continued, rising and falling like a distant conversation. And then, just when I was starting to think maybe, just maybe, there was something supernatural happening in Jamie's bedroom. A loud meow broke through the murmuring, and we both jumped. What the? I started, swinging my phone's flashlight toward the sound. There, sitting on Jamie's windowsill outside the slightly open window, was a large orange cat, meowing insistently. As my light hit it, it meowed again, and the sound was unmistakably similar to the murmuring we'd been hearing. Jamie stared at the cat, then at me, his expression a mixture of relief and embarrassment. That's Mrs. Henderson's cat from next door, he said slowly. But that doesn't explain the bed moving or the temperature changes. I got up, still holding my phone, and walked to the foot of the bed. Shining the light underneath, I discovered the source of our ghostly weight. Jamie's collection of books had been stacked under the bed, but several had fallen over, causing the box spring to shift slightly when we moved. Mystery solved, I said, pulling out a fallen copy of The Turn of the Screw, ironically, a ghost story. Your ghost is a combination of a nosy neighborhood cat and your poor book storage choices. Jamie looked both relieved and slightly disappointed. But what about the cold? It definitely got colder in here. I pointed to the window, which was cracked open about an inch. Your feline visitor probably pushed it open wider when it came to say hello. The night air is pretty chilly. Jamie sat there for a moment, processing everything. Then he buried his face in his hands with a groan. I can't believe I dragged you over here for a cat and some books. I feel like such an idiot. I sat back down on the bed beside him, putting a gentle hand on his shoulder. Hey, don't be so hard on yourself. When you're alone in an old house at night, it's easy for your imagination to run wild. I probably would have thought the same thing. Jamie peeked at me through his fingers. You're just saying that to make me feel better. You've never believed in ghosts a day in your life. True, I admitted. But I do believe in being there for the people I care about, ghost or no ghost. Jamie lowered his hands, his expression softening. Thank you for coming over. Even if it turned out to be nothing. I wouldn't say it was nothing, I replied, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting, of how intimate the moment felt. I got to spend the evening with you, didn't I? That's definitely something. In the dim light of my phone's flashlight, I could see a blush spreading across Jamie's cheeks. Alex, he said quietly, I should probably confess something. Let me guess, I said with a small smile. There never was a ghost, was there? Jamie looked down, fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. There were definitely weird noises, I swear. But maybe I exaggerated how scared I was. I just wanted an excuse to spend time with you. Alone. The admission hung in the air between us, honest and vulnerable. I could have teased him about it, could have called him out on his transparent ploy. But looking at him sitting there, nervous and sincere, all I felt was a rush of affection. You know, I said softly, if you wanted to spend time with me, you could have just asked. No ghostly pretext required. Jamie looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Really? Because I've been trying to figure out how to tell you that I've had feelings for you for a while now. But I never knew if you felt the same way, and I didn't want to risk our friendship, and I cut off his nervous rambling in the most effective way I could think of, by leaning in and kissing him. It was a gentle kiss, tentative at first, but when Jamie responded by wrapping his arms around my neck and pulling me closer, it deepened into something more certain, more real than any ghost could ever be. When we finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Jamie was smiling wider than I'd ever seen. So, he said, does this mean you feel the same way? What do you think? I laughed. I drove across town at 9 p.m. on a Friday night because you said your bed was haunted. If that's not devotion, I don't know what is. Jamie laughed too, the sound bright and happy in the now not-so-spooky bedroom. When you put it that way, it does sound pretty obvious. Almost as obvious as your haunted bed excuse, I teased, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Hey, it worked, didn't it? Jamie countered, his eyes twinkling. You're here, in my bed, and I just got to kiss you. I'd say my plan was a roaring success, ghost or no ghost. I couldn't argue with that logic. So what now? I asked, suddenly aware that we were still sitting in his bed, in the middle of the night, with a new understanding between us. Jamie's expression turned thoughtful. Well, we should probably close that window properly before Mrs. Henderson's cat decides to join us for real. And then, maybe we could just sleep? Actually sleep, I mean. It's late, and now that I know my bedroom isn't haunted, I might finally get a good night's rest. Especially with you here. The simplicity of the suggestion, the lack of pressure, made me fall for him just a little bit more. I'd like that, I said. We got up to secure the window, shooing away the orange cat with an affectionate scolding. I helped Jamie pick up the fallen books and store them properly on the bookshelf instead of under the bed. Then we climbed back under the covers, this time with no pretense of maintaining distance. Jamie curled against my side, his head resting on my shoulder, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. You know, he murmured sleepily. Even though it wasn't a real ghost, I'm glad it brought us together like this. I pressed a kiss to the top of his head. Me too. Though next time you want me to sleep over, maybe just ask? No supernatural excuses needed. Next time, Jamie repeated, the happiness evident in his voice. I liked the sound of that. As we drifted off to sleep, the old house settling around us with its creaks and groans, I thought about how sometimes the most unexpected situations lead us exactly where we're meant to be. And while I still didn't believe in ghosts, I was starting to believe in something else, something just as mysterious and wonderful, growing between Jamie and me. The next morning, we woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the distant sound of birds chirping. Jamie was still nestled against me, his breathing deep and even. I watched him for a moment, taking in the peaceful expression on his face, the way his dark lashes rested against his cheeks. When he finally stirred and opened his eyes, the smile that spread across his face was like the sunrise, warm and full of promise. Good morning, he said softly. No ghost sightings in the night. I smiled back, brushing a thumb across his cheek. Not a one. Just a very cute literature student who talks in his sleep. Jamie groaned, burying his face against my shoulder. I do not talk in my sleep. How would you know? I laughed. You're asleep when it happens. Our morning continued with this easy banter, making breakfast together in Jamie's kitchen, stealing kisses between flipping pancakes and brewing coffee. It felt simultaneously new and familiar, like we'd crossed a threshold we'd been approaching for years. As I prepared to leave later that morning, Jamie walked me to my car, our fingers intertwined. So, he said, a hint of nervousness returning to his voice, what are you doing tonight? Maybe we could go for dinner? A proper date this time. No haunted furniture involved. I squeezed his hand, my heart full. I'd love that. Though I have to admit, as far as first dates go, a ghost investigation was pretty memorable. Jamie laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet morning street. I'll take that as a compliment to my creativity, even if it was unintentional. Before getting into my car, I pulled him close for one more kiss, no longer caring who might see us from neighboring houses. You know, I said against his lips, I think I might have been haunted all along. Jamie pulled back slightly, his brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? You've been haunting my thoughts for years, I admitted. I just never had the courage to do anything about it. The smile that spread across Jamie's face was worth every moment of the strange night we'd shared. Well, he said, looks like we both needed a little supernatural intervention to get us on the right track. As I drove away, glancing at Jamie waving from his porch in my rearview mirror, I couldn't help but think that sometimes the most rational explanation isn't always the most important one. Whether it was a ghost, a cat, or simply the universe giving us a nudge, what mattered was where we ended up, together, finally, after all this time. And if Jamie ever claimed his bed was haunted again, well, I'd be more than happy to investigate, night after night, for as long as he wanted me there beside him. Just in case. Total _char_count. 18,744.